Ruslan KD just appeared on George Janko's podcast, and he confronted them about the fact that they've been living as if they are married while calling themselves Christians and not being actually married. And the way George Janko and his fiancé respond is absolutely shocking. So up to this point, Ruslan has just read through, kind of walked them through 1 Corinthians for a bit, and especially got to verse number 7, and he's just summarizing it all now. He's asking them, why haven't you gotten married? You're living like you're married. And so he's just finishing up, and then they're going to have a back and forth.
If they cannot control themselves, they should marry. And this is the principle. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Mm-hmm. So he's basically saying, look, if you are passionate for each other, if you have sexual desires for each other, don't continue being how the world is. Might as well just go get married. Like
No. I know that. Yeah. But here, again, I hope I don't get smoked for this. But there's so many Bible verses. Like there was a guy who I wish I knew it from my heart, but there was a guy who made it final by just going into a tent and having sex with her, and that was his marriage. Mm-hmm. I think it's because we had sex, that covenant's already there, regardless if I have a priest fulfill it or not. Mm-hmm. I feel because we already have that covenant, we became one. Mm-hmm. That I'm just honoring her like my wife. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, sometimes when I introduce her, I'll introduce her as my wife.
I've heard.
Real quick, so you notice the problem with that logic though, and I don't even think he realizes it, and he's going to see the problem with it a little bit later. The problem with the logic is he's saying, well, because since we already have been intimate with one another, we've already had sex, now we're basically in the covenant relationship. I would imagine that he's probably been intimate with other people before he was with her. What about them? Was he not in the covenant relationship with them? He did the same thing. Maybe he loved those women too. Maybe he liked those women a lot. Maybe he didn't love them at all. Either way, if the act itself constitutes a covenant relationship, then it's a done deal. He should be married to someone else. He's been abandoning his wife or multiple wives for who knows how long, but clearly that's not the situation. He's taking an example of when two people consummated their union and using that to almost try to override what's in the New Testament.
I've heard you do that.
Yeah, and it's because I told God, I go, God, I've already made that mistake, so I'm not sitting here waiting for her to be my wife. I took what wasn't mine yet. Mm-hmm. I already have permission from her father, mm-hmm. And I've given you my promise. Mm-hmm. As of right now, I am married to her, mm-hmm. in your eyes, I feel. Mm-hmm. And then I will also get married the way that it should, so I could be a good example of what you have to be married. Mm-hmm. I think that's my problem of why I kept pushing it back, is because we live just like husband and wife. I think what happened is this is always my issue. My ego thinks my wisdom is okay, we're already married, so it's fine. And so we can just keep pushing it back, but it's dishonest, because if I'm representing Christ, then I should represent how the church represents marriage. Yeah. So I know I'm wrong.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're his wife?
I mean,
I will look at you. Can answer.
No, I do. That's the thing, because how Georgie and I's relationship, we've always, and thankfully, honestly, because of his, he's led our relationship this way. We've involved God in our relationship since the very first day that we started dating. And so because of that, he's always treated me like his wife, if that makes sense. His actions from him dating me to then him being engaged to me didn't all of a sudden change, where he's like, oh, well, now I look at you, my wife, so now I'm going to start acting like a man. He always has. So once we made that promise to God, we made that promise to my family, we made that promise to his family, and we announce it, you know what I mean? We see each other okay, in the eyes of God, you know what I mean? We are one. Yeah. We are married, you know? Yeah. And so, but of course, a ceremony and having a wedding is something that's very important to me. I know it's something that's very important to him, and it's something that we very much so look forward to. Mm-hmm. But I will say that in that sense, I have so much to learn still. Mm-hmm. My relationship with God is still so new. Mm-hmm. And as Georgia said, and I think this is great putting, I'm a baby when it comes to my relationship with my walk with Jesus. Yeah.
This is something that I love when I see George Janko and I see her as well talk about the things that they believe, the things that they think. They're also saying, we're probably wrong about a lot of this. We don't know a lot. We're trying to learn. And what's very interesting, and this is pretty unique to the modern day, is you have a lot of people who are learning publicly. But I love how transparent they are. And I'm actually going to do a video about that on something else that they say. But you notice what they're saying. They just go, and they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. They're saying stuff like, well, we're already living as if we're married. We kind of feel like we're married in God's eyes. We know that we're probably technically not, but we definitely really want to get married. We definitely really want to have the wedding, but also we don't want to wait and live as people who are not married. We want to have our cake and eat it too, basically, is what they're saying. And they know that that's probably wrong.
And there's so much I need to learn when it comes to our covenant and marriage. And so when we got engaged, in my mind, I was like, well, I want us to take our time, because I don't want you to be stressed. I don't want to be stressed. We have so much work going on, and I want you to enjoy every bit of it. And so I think took that, and I was like, let's take our time. But then there's so many things I have to learn, in the sense that it's well, no, there should be more of an urgency. We need to be married so that we are, in right standing. Even though we feel like we're in right standing, I know that there are some things that we need to do in order to be fully in right standing, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
The heart is deceitful, right? And
Yeah.
my deceitful heart made it seem. I keep putting my foot there. and
You're
keep
good. I
saying
can move
Bible.
my foot.
No. It's because you're a Bible. I don't want my foot to be towards
Oh,
your
okay.
Bible. I think what happened is like because I see us as like we're married and like she just said, like I was leading the relationship with faith, but I poisoned it because I put my own worldly needs there. So I corrupted it. So it's not like I'm like I found a loophole and now we're married. It's me just with like shame on my face. Like I failed as a leader. I took what wasn't mine yet, and so I'm not gonna sit here and say that I was right. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold that responsibility.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Man, I respect that a lot about him. You notice that he's upfront about it. You know what? It wasn't really me trying to make a serious spiritual decision when we first were intimate with each other. I was just thinking in the flesh. I was thinking just what my body desired, and I wasn't fully thinking it all the way through the way I have now in the future. Look back and retroactively try to say that's what it meant. I know that's not really what it meant. Again, very admirable for him to be so open and honest about that.
Well, first of all, like, I love that you guys are living this in front of the whole world, so that you're like, I'm new to this thing, dude. Like, I'm still figuring out. And you guys, like, even with the Girls Gone Bible episode and you being vulnerable about like language and all these things, like there's a refreshing authenticity that I think you guys have that I think is so good in the sense of like you being willing to walk in front of the whole world, and that can't be easy. I think the flip side to that is like kind of what you've already said, right? Like in the eyes of our society and our culture, we tend to have a low view of the symbolism of a ceremony, a low view of the symbolism of coming before a man, a priest, a pastor, whatever capacity. And so then we end up, because you guys are functionally living like a married couple, like practically you live together, you sleep in the same bed, right? You're doing all the things. Like in any stream of Christianity, Orthodoxy, Syrian Church of the East, Oriental Orthodox, Catholicism, Protestant, in any stream of Christianity, they're gonna look at you guys as maybe you're functionally living, but there should be some sort of ceremony or something done, in my opinion, in the interim. Like,
Yeah, no,
and there is.
there
like,
is that.
like find
over my dead body will I not have a full wedding? And I think that's the thing. As a girl, get stuck because I'm like, I want it to be perfect and I want it to be everything my dreams. And then it's like, well, hold on. I need to do what's right with God, and I need to get on it so I can do the things that God needs me to do.
Look at that. You see, they're starting to recognize it. The tide is shifting a little bit. They're starting to go, you know what? We're so worried about the material things. They even said, well, we don't want to get stressed out. We don't want to worry about a big old wedding. We just got engaged, and let's just live our lives. Let's just act like we are married, and we'll just deal with that little ceremony later. And it's true. There is a lot of value to the ceremony. There is a lot of value to doing this before the eyes of God in a way that is not just saying we're just going to act like we're married and just go from there.
You guys, my advice, can I speak
please.
into this? So my advice would be, plan the wedding of your dreams. Like, do everything. You guys are going to crush it. It's going to be beautiful, right? But I would recommend, and pray about it. Actually, don't pray about it. I would recommend do something that with a pastor, that where you exchange vows and you solidify that you're married before God, before a pastor, a priest, whoever
We've
you
thought
want it to
about
be.
this.
Yeah,
That's a really good idea.
we've talked about this.
Honestly,
And
I think
if it's-
it's something we should do.
I know.
And here's the reason why. Is
I love
because
having this conversation.
I hate the guilt of it.
Yeah.
I hate the guilt of it. And also, it's like, I think what happened in our life is that we're trying to please everybody, that we're like failing God.
There's so many variables, I think, to this, and like of everyone in our lives, and even for me, like personal, family members where
Expectations.
Oh, here she is.
Real quick. You see that he said the guilt of it? The guilt of it? He was just trying to rationalize it, but now he's admitted the whole time he's been feeling guilt. A lot of the time we try to push off or shrug off the guilt that we feel when we know that we're doing something that is wrong in God's eyes, and we just try to rationalize it. But now he's admitting, yeah, I've been feeling guilty about this.
but there's always going to be something in the way. There's always going to be like so much things going on, right?
I know what you're talking about.
So, regardless of anything, it's interesting we're having this conversation now because, it's something that was been in my heart for like a few weeks now, where I've thought, because we talked about this before, we're like, should we just have, like a private, ceremony with a priest so we can be fully in right standing with God, and then we can plan the wedding of our dreams. We talked about that, but then we're like, I don't know, do we want to do that? Do we want to save that for the real thing? All that stuff. And then last few weeks I've been thinking about it hard, because I personally have had my own conversations with God, and where I felt like once you know, and once you know what you're doing is wrong, then it's like, how can I turn a blind eye to that? And then keep coming to God and being like, well, Lord, like, help me with this and help me with this and be there with me through this and make sure that this doesn't happen. But then it's like, well, am I doing my part? Am I making the sacrifice?
Man, I love that so much. I love that heart. I love that spirit saying, how am I going to be the kind of person that says I want to be committed to God, I want to do his will, but then at the same time, I'm asking him for all this help, but at the same time, I see parts of his will that I'm not doing, and I'm just choosing not to do them, but I'm asking God, please help me, please bless me, guide my life, but then I'm not letting him guide my life.
Yeah. And so...
I didn't know you were feeling this way. So was I.
Really?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I just, that whole thing about me making like a promise to God and not fulfilling it has been eating me up like crazy. I think it's because we weren't going to announce this, but we're about to get our dream home. And
congrats,
when
bro.
I walked in it, I felt super
so
guilty,
cool.
bro. Because I would literally dream about this type of house, and I always knew that I was going to be married when I walked into this house. So not fully being married, I was just kind of like, man, this sucks. Not on his part, on my part. Like if I was a partner with somebody and they kept, like you said, you have that that feeling when somebody says they're going to do something and they don't, it rages you. It's like, I would be outraged if the amount of times I did that to my God, if my partner did that to me. I don't think I would be able to even handle it.
Yeah. I think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, I was just going to say, I think sometimes we'll buy into this deception that like we need to spend so much time planning the wedding that we overlook building the marriage and building the marriage on a healthy foundation. And me and my wife,
and by the way, that's a really good tip that I've heard from someone. I heard it said a little bit differently, which is don't spend more time on your wedding than you do preparing for your marriage.
Crossed boundaries. And I could tell you guys, like, there was consequences to that, of like not doing it God's way, all the way. But that doesn't mean there's not grace and there's not mercy, and I think you guys are in a position where you know that when you do things God's way in a practical sense, the supernatural release of that. Like we talked about the honoring the mother and father, right? Yeah. Like, listen, I'm just gonna honor mom. I can't speak to my mom that way. And
it's above our understanding.
Yeah, and you do it, and then like something like kind of unlocks, and you're like, whoa. And not to mention like the weight of the shame and the guilt is lifted, and you're like, oh man, this is that way. And so I think you guys are in a spot where outside of like you being massively influential to a lot of people and how beautiful that would be to be like, hey, we're going to have a ceremony, but like in the interim, we decided to get married because we want to honor God with our bodies, and our bodies are the temple of God, and we're going to do it in a way that glorifies God. I think your parents would probably love that as well, even though they may not be at the ceremony and right? And I think it would be optimal for your own spirituality, like where you are with Jesus. I think it'd be good, and I think you guys would appreciate it.
You want to do that?
I do. And
she just said I do in the wedding language. They just agree to get married. It's amazing. Again, masterful job by Ruslan here by gently pushing them and nudging them in the right direction to make the right choice. I love that she said I do. It's so funny. I love this so much about George Janko. Before, he was convinced that he should stop cussing, that he's a Christian, he shouldn't just be cussing every other word. And now he's getting convinced to get married. And it's not because he's an impulsive person. He's just trying to go down this path where he gets a better and better and better idea of what God wants of him. And that is absolutely amazing. I'm super excited for him. Let me know what you think. Did George Janko need to do that? Did they need to make that decision? Could they have just waited? What are your thoughts about this, especially those of you who are Christians? I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider supporting on Patreon. God bless you, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.